listeners, the crowd at Newport, they heard free jazz that festival. Yeah, because they were supposed to stop. They paid to get in to hear Duke play for an hour and a half. Duke was supposed to stop, and then they got an extra half hour of free jazz.
Free jazz.
Free jazz.
Free jazz. They didn't have to pay for that extra half hour of Duke Ellington. They got free jazz.
That's punny. Real punny.
Real funny.
Very good.
That's awesome. This week, we are covering none other than Duke Ellington, live at Newport, 1956. Came out from Columbia on LP and CD. This week, I'm going to start off my week in music. Last week I didn't. So it's been a fun week this week. I've wrapped up my last few days with official Trek business, so I'm out of the bike shop back in photography. That was fun. That means that this weekend we ended the last NICA race of this season. What a great afternoon, 70 degrees, slight breeze, sunny and gorgeous, into thunderstorms today. We have got a gig coming up as the New School of Music Austin at Central Market. We're going to do a 30-minute set in the mix of Austin Independent School District jazz bands playing at Central Market. So we've got that coming up, so obviously practicing for that. And then, of course, we've got the Texas Jazz and Blues Camp coming up June 15th through the 20th. And then this Thursday, I get to go see Milo Himsoth perform at Monk's. So excited about that in a few days. I'm reminded every day is a chance to start new, like springtime or Easter, since we're in spring, or new jobs. It's also a chance to reflect back on old friends and great things that have come because of the great relationship built. New beginnings bring new struggles, new obstacles, but it also brings new growth and the joy that you get and the proof that you receive that you can overcome those new beginnings. And I'm thinking about just the fact that I'm learning the trumpet and I'm struggling through improvisation, and I'm looking at Dad and his drum lessons as he goes in learning something new. So that's been my week, and that's my words that I'm learning.
Let me add to that, because I looked up some information on the A train that I hope we hear later. I think we will. But think about a train and what you just said, because you get on a train, you might know people who are there, but you might not. You might meet people who you do know, and then they get off the train and you're still on the train and you're meeting new people. You're saying goodbye to some of the other people that you've known. And the train and transportation is a lot like that. And I think that's just cool. It fits in somewhat to what you said.
That's awesome.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
So tell us about your week and your drum lesson.
So was it last week or this week before last? Anyway, your mama sent you a video of me playing along with Aerosmith Dream On.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to interject that right now so everybody sees it.
No way.
Yeah.
What a great clip.
That was awesome, Dad.
It was so much fun. And I had tears in my eyes. And Delaney said, Grandpa, why are you crying? I said, Delaney, this is so exciting for me that I could play along with those, 8 measures, four measures. And I thought, oh, this is just too cool. Just too cool. So I was skying high, and I wasn't even on drugs. just the dopamine, man. The dopamine hit me hard. So that was cool.
So cool.
But yeah. My weekend music was broken up really because we had our bathroom painted, had to rip up the carpeting, the last of the carpeting, the last of the staples. Mom and I together worked like at least 7 hours trying to pop staples up from the padding that was put down. And it was just plain exhausting. But most of that time I did have music in my ear. I was listening to Clifford Brown, and I wrote down Mac Powell, but it's actually Mac Roach, right?
Max Roach.
Yeah. And Wes Montgomery, Smoking at the Half Note. So I was listening to some of that, and of course Duke Ellington. So I was in it somewhat.
Yeah,
but,
you were.
I would say you were.
Yeah.
That on your list this week. Holy cow.
Well, again, whatever you do it to jazz, right? Pulling staples out of the floor. And what better album than Max Roach and
right?
than Clifford Brown Quintet?
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Well, is it my turn?
There you go, Matt.
Okay, cool.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Matt. Let's move right along.
Cool, because I didn't have that much to say anyways, besides this week's album. Ellington at Newport happens to be a 2 hour and 8 minute session. So, to have that in your ear even 2 times this week, that's 4 hours of music. It's a lot of Ellington all at once. It's a buffet of rice and beans and wow. So I had a lot of Ellington in my ear. I did. I went back to some Mingus this week because I didn't get enough last week. Mingus.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Note
yeah.
Yourself. We'll get to that in a moment.
Okay. So yeah, sometimes when we move artists, I missed last week's art. Well, last week was Ella, but I went back 2 weeks because I missed Charles. So, but yeah, I had a lot of great music in my ear this week. Coming up will be Three Rivers Big Band Night on Wednesday. So I'm excited about that. No, that's next week. Anyways, so I'm always excited to go see them. So, yep, that was my week pretty much.
Yeah, actually Tuesday, tomorrow night, we go to the community band performance at Purdue.
Oh, cool.
Power Center, yeah. One of the guys in our Bible study group is a baritone player, and so we're going to go listen to the community band.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now it's time to jump on the train. Let's get this clip in real quick.
Now, I thought, Dad, you were going to go somewhere different with the train story because this is the A train.
Yep.
It's the quickest way to Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And if y'all haven't studied or looked into the history of Billy Strayhorn's A Train, this is my note to you now. Go dig into the information and where this song originated from, because the story in and of itself is worth a listen. With that being said, we have agreed as the three of us that you guys, listeners, must hear this.
It's just too hard to sit still. It's too hard to sit still with that song.
It is. That is Take the A Train, live from Newport Jazz Festival, 1959. Man, And
Beautiful.
what a way to start this conversation, this show on this album and this artist.
Beautiful piece of music, isn't it?
Sure is.
Jazz music.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think we talked about doing the slideshow first this week. What do you think? You want to do that?
I have to agree with that because there's a lot of great information that you've put together here, and I don't want to end up double dipping in the conversation because we could talk about Ellington for months.
Oh, yeah.
And never cover it all. But
No.
again, this is Ellington at Newport, so we can kind of funnel the... With that being said, let's get the slideshow.
This happens to be number 33 on our countdown. We are using the JazzWise magazine's top 100 albums that shook the world from 2022. Number 33, tonight's artist, Duke Ellington, Ellington at Newport. And I do really dig the artwork. You know, it's a great picture of Duke. The lettering, the font, and the color, just it's outstanding. It's outstanding artwork. That's all I'm going to say about the artwork.
Clean and professional, just like Duke.
Just like Duke. Moving on to jazz lingo for the day. I tried to pick a term that would have been relevant to the era of Duke in 1956 when the album came out. So I picked popsicle stick, and it's slang for the sax's reed, the sax player's reed. So, hey man, did you bring any extra popsicle sticks?
I love that.
I know, right?
I really do.
Yeah, I don't. You'll have to ask Lily if they use it today, but I don't think they do. But popsicle stick. All right, moving on to the next slide where you can get it. This list stays the same just about every week that we can find music on all of these locations. And I did check Discogs once again. The CDs and the LPs are available for sale. Quote at the bottom of that slide: "My attitude is never to be satisfied, never enough, never." And that's a quote from Duke. And
he was perfection.
He pretty much epitomized, perfection. I don't think he didn't expect his performers to be perfect, but he wanted the music. He wanted the way he looked. He wanted the way he presented himself to be perfect. So,
yep. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next slide, the timeline slide. Edward Kennedy Ellington, otherwise known as Duke, was born in 1899. In the late 30s as when he started working with Billy, not Belly, Billy Strayhorn. I typed in Billy, so you'll probably fix that. But they started working together in the late 30s. In the 1950s is when he did his post-war tour in Europe. So the big bands were kind of winding down because they weren't paying enough. They weren't getting paid enough to pay all the members in a band. Duke wanted to keep going with his big band, so he took a tour in Europe. In 1956 is when this album was recorded, and then in 1974, Duke passes away. You know,
I'm going to interject here real quick. I was reading earlier today that to keep the band working, they may actually have been playing at ice shows, at ice skating rinks, to keep the band going. So they did every side hustle they could find to keep the band playing. I was just moved by that, reading that. He was a hustler. He wanted to keep the members getting paid, keep the band playing.
Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Well, and any little gig that he could get, even if it didn't pay enough to pay the whole band, it was still better than nothing.
Yep.
So
it's commendable of him. Very commendable.
Very commendable. Now, as a musician, he comes to you and says, "Hey, we're not getting paid for this, freezing your butts off standing out here on the ice." I don't know. They may have a different opinion, but commendable of Duke for sure. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the information slide. Some of the influences that I found this week for Duke Ellington, there was a trumpeter named Bubber Miley, was listed as one of his main influences that really characterized his style of writing, his style of music. So Bubber Miley. And then there's piano players named Doc Perry, Lewis Brown, and Sticky Mac. Now, I didn't put on any of those artists to listen to see if I could, pick up an influence or hear a little bit of Duke in their music. So, that'll just have to come later this week or whatever. But some of the names, Bubber Miley and Sticky Mac.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't find anything additional. I kind of ran into Lewis Brown and Sticky Mac, but
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, not much additional. I don't know. We could have
I
done.
have to go back to 1899. He's born,
Yeah.
and it's 25 years. It's 24 years, and then you've got the New Orleans conversation that you have with King Oliver and Louis.
Yep.
Or did he ever hear Buddy Bolden play? So
Right.
he was one of the beginning jazz. So it would be back down to ragtime or some classically trained pianist teaching him. So
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Can I interject something here?
Please.
But thanks for
I
asking.
I'm going to do it anyway. The first recorded jazz song is Livery Stable Blues. It was done in 1917, and it was by the original Dixieland Jazz Band. I thought
Any idea where that recording was done?
no, I don't. Where was it done, Jeanette?
It very well might have been in Jeanette. I'm not sure that they were recording.
1917. I don't think it was Jeanette yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
What cool knowledge. I was just talking about Jeanette and the recording and the history of star piano yesterday. So I'm glad you brought that up. Livery Stable Blues.
Yep.
1917.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Okay.
All right, back to the information slide. Duke's got 96 studio albums released and 65 live albums. So a huge collection. You know, we only really get 1 week to listen to the music. There's no way we could listen to all that music in 1 week. But man, what a lifetime of great music we got to go ahead and listen to more of Duke Ellington's stuff with 96 studio and 65 live. The genre that I've got listed is jazz and swing. Now, you pretty much can't. I mean, you really couldn't give him any more of a genre except for those two. So, did you want to add anything?
I read somewhere, I didn't write down which one of the tracks, but they described parts of it as being like rock and roll music.
Paul Gonsalves sax solo in between two parts of the song.
Oh, okay.
He got a little funky fresh, which I think is what motivated the crowd to get a little cuckoo and crazy. They lost their. You can hear it in between because the CD does have the audio of the crowd, and when the first set ends and they lose their mind, Matt, you and I talked about it. They lose their minds, and then he continues to play. And then the director of it comes up and says, "Hey, you guys need to. We've got to get these people out of here. We're done." And so Duke Ellington says, "Yeah, let me handle that real quick. I'll get them off. We'll go ahead and make an announcement. We're done." He goes, "We're not done yet. We got a few more songs to do."
You've heard of Billy. If you've heard of the saxophone, you've heard of Billy Strayhorn.
Johnny Hodges.
Or Johnny Hodges.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we've got a feature for him right now. And so he kicks the producer off the stage and they go back into playing. And the crowd loses it.
The funny part is, though, you can hear that producer. No, you're done. he just starts up the band and they just go.
When you hear the audience screaming and yelling, and then, of course, what you said, Dad, is that part of that is rock and roll, 59. So he starts into that sax solo in between songs and tears it up. Now the crowd has lost their mind, which I think is part of the turning of bringing Ellington back to the forefront of everybody's mind.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that begins the rest of his lifetime. It really does. For the next, 3 decades before he passes. Man. I love this album. Let's get back to the slideshow.
All right, let's cover a few more facts about Ellington. He wrote or collaborated on more than 1,000 compositions. That's just huge. I can't imagine the amount of time that he spent looking at charts and doing compositions. He took over a position at the Cotton Club when King Oliver turned it down. So that had to be way early in his career. I didn't write down an exact date for that fact, but I did read it that he did take over a position over King Oliver when he turned it down.
Yeah.
Of course, he did win 14 Grammys. He's got 9 Grammy Hall of Fame awards. In 1960, he earned the Hollywood Walk of Fame, so he's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And then in 1966, the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, which, you have to be dang good to get that Grammy Lifetime Achievement. So they don't just hand those out. A few facts about Ellington at Newport. We just touched on it just briefly just a minute ago, but this album,
I got excited and jumped the gun.
No, that's great. This album revitalized his career. So, like you said, it's not that he was necessarily in a slump, but in a slow spot in his career. And then this album, they came kicking with this album, and it just revitalized his whole career. 2022, this album was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation. So this is in the Library of Congress catalog. I made this mention, and we just talked about it briefly, but pandemonium took to the crowd when they thought the band was done playing. And then Duke played 4 more songs before actually ending the concert. But what a clown! Here, hold my beer. We're going to keep going.
And I wrote in one of my notes here, he did not have a record deal at the time. So he was not signed with Columbia. Columbia wanted to record this. And it was a great move on him. Right after the concert, Columbia signed him for a record deal.
Okay, well, here's my thing. I know it's late. It's probably dark. The staff is probably ready to go home. But, man, if the crowd wants to stay and the band wants to stay...
Yeah.
What's hurting it? They probably could have played for 4 hours.
Yes and no. When you go back to the history of the festival, and I've read up on this, it's 1956, and I think I misquoted 59 earlier. It was 1956 during this third festival there in Newport. There have been a lot of resistance. It's bad for the field. It's bad for transportation. It's bad to have the colored folk running around in our neighborhood. So there were tight limitations on the festival there, which later caused some issues, which is why they moved from Boston to New York for the festival. So I think there was other tensions going on about getting this done early, partly to get set up, tore down to get out. So I think there were some other pressures going on, but you're right. If the crowd's going ballistic and you've got people being entertained, that's what the festival represents. Mm-hmm. And it's what it continued to represent is the excitement of the lineup of musicians that Newport Jazz would always have.
Yeah.
So, let them play, man. Let them play.
Let them play.
So because I'm a complete unconnoisseur, I had no awareness. Newport. Where's Newport? Turns out it's at the Fort Adams State Park in Rhode Island.
Yes.
So that puts it a little bit in perspective for me. I can picture somewhat where that would be. And again, I would understand the rioting of the crowd. Didn't necessarily appreciate it, but...
That's a great nugget. I didn't even look that up. When I hear Newport, all I think of is Virginia Beach, Newport News. But I didn't even look it up. Yeah. So thanks for looking that up because it's in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Yeah, Newport, Rhode Island.
Oh, cool.
Fort Adams.
Adams, and I misquoted that Boston. I remember the introduction, and we've got folks from Boston.
That's right. So in 1999, on the Jazzwise Top 100 album, this album came in at number 56. On the 06 list, this album came in at number 35. And again, we are using the 2022 list, and it came in at number 33. So it has steadily worked its way up into the top 30s. All 3 lists. The 6 degrees that I found this week, fairly easy. Clark Terry, you mentioned Clark earlier. Duke Ellington and Clark Terry is actually in this band that we're listening to. And then Clark and Miles collabed quite a bit together. So, and actually Clark taught Miles. So
he taught Dewey. Well,
he taught Dewey.
Let me rephrase that. He didn't teach Dewey. because Dewey went to him to get taught, and Clark blew him off.
That's right.
And then when Quincy Jones come knocking on Clark Terry's door at his hotel and asked him to be taught, he had learned his mistake. I will teach this kid.
That's right. It's a good thing he did too.
Right?
All right.
Who would have known? Quincy Jones, man. Who would have known? Come on.
I know. Moving on to the next slide. Today in jazz history. Today, this episode, May the 7th, Sidney Bechet, who happens to be a saxophone clarinetist, was born in 1897. Fletcher Henderson records Wrapping It Up in 1934. And drummer Zutty Singleton was born in 1898. I think that's back when rainbows were still black and white.
That's what I'm guessing.
One final quote from Duke on the bottom of this slide. There are two kinds of worries. Those you can do something about and those you can't. Don't spend any time on the latter.
Yep.
Yeah. He had some really good quotes. It's like he's a man of wisdom and insight. Because, if I may, he also said there are two kinds of music, good music and the other kind. We're only about the good stuff, and I can't wait to play it for you, to make it for you. That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
The good stuff and the other stuff.
Yeah. I can't wait to play the good stuff for you. He was an optimist as well, because he said a problem is a chance for you to do your best.
Mm-hmm.
Just go at it. Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Do the best you can. You're not going to fail if you're doing the best you can.
A problem is an opportunity to find an answer.
Yeah.
That's my quote.
There you go.
Find a solution for your problem.
We'll,
necessity is the mother of all inventions.
Drew, put that, make sure you write that down for next week when we show quotes. Matt Rice says that's going to go down. It's going to go down in history, man.
Unconnoisseur history.
Yes.
So, Dad, to finish out the slideshow, tell us what's new.
I found this album called Tippin' by Carl Allen, and I'm telling you, to me, it was so excitable. I was so excited to listen to it. It's so smooth and rhythmic, and it just flows. We've got Carl Allen. He's a drummer, by the way. Maybe that gives you an idea of part of the reason I chose this. But he's got Chris Potter, who's a sax player, and Christian McBride, who's a bassist. And it is one smooth album. I would just highly recommend.
I know you guys both got a chance to listen to it. I have not yet. And
yeah.
Now that you've thrown out Christian McBride,
mm-hmm.
I'm in.
I knew that
before bed tonight.
I knew that was going to get you. I did. I knew it was. Pay attention to song number 10, James.
Okay.
You may recognize it. It's from it's a song by my man Pat Metheny.
Okay.
And Carl has several other albums, not the least of which several albums with Rodney Whitaker.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got one called The Pursuer, which is on the Atlantic album in 1994. This is a 61-year-old man, and I watched a little short clip of him this afternoon. Very well spoken, soft spoken. He looks like a real gentleman, and I think our listeners are going to appreciate this album, Tippin'. It's called Tippin'. So
it just came out. It just came out in 2025, right?
Yes, March or April.
Okay,
perfect. Yeah. Well, that's what's new then.
Yeah.
Well, he's a powerhouse. I made some notes because I browsed his website real quick. He has collaborated with the Brecker brothers. So Randy and Michael Brecker, separately and together as the Brecker brothers. He collaborated with my man Freddie Hubbard. He collaborated with Terrence Blanchard, Branford Marsalis. And he's got a quote on his main page of his website from my man Pat Metheny. So this isn't a slouch. This is you're going to enjoy this.
You've read all my faves.
He played with a group I guess, called the Manhattan Projects.
Uh-huh.
Several albums, and one of them was called Dreamboat. And in that album, Roy Hargrove played.
See, I didn't catch that one, but now I got to go listen.
In heaven.
Now I got to go listen to Roy Hargrove again. Oh, darn.
Kenny Jarrett and Donald Brown and Ira Coleman. So this is a not premier. This is a very professional and highly skilled. In fact, he took over a position at Juilliard.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went on to the University of Missouri at Kansas City, and he was the chair in their jazz area. So this is a skilled drummer.
Check out his website. It is carlallen.com. There's loads of information about Carl. And he has actually been to Fort Wayne doing a drum clinic at the Percussion Center.
Good deal.
All right. Let's move into Eclipse, because I'm super excited to hear what you guys picked, and I know what I picked. So
go for it.
I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off because there's a couple of things that tied in to the slideshow and to the information. So without further ado, the clip that I wanted was part 3, Newport Up. Now I'm gonna start this at about 1 minute and 26 seconds. I'll just leave it at that. I had to do it.
I know you did.
I had to do it.
I know you did.
And all I could think about every time he started to play was daddle diddle daddle doodle doodle. And you can almost hear that reflection in his flugelhorn here. What really blew me away about listening to Mr. Clark Terry play in the middle of this show is that when we read the book, Clark, the autobiography, and his stories, his ability to, we sat with him. He just told stories through this book, and I can relate. But he talked about how much Duke Ellington hated the flugelhorn. And then later, Duke Ellington started to write pieces that highlighted the flugelhorn. That would have been during this time period. Clark Terry traveled with him and toured with him from 1951 to 1959. So this is in the heart of their friendship. And so to hear Clark Terry railing on that flugelhorn in the middle of the Newport Jazz Festival, it just takes me to the fact that Duke wrote for his musicians. And you're going to hear it, I know, in a clip that's coming up. When the trumpeter can play like he can, or the sax can play like he can, or the drummer can do what he can do, Duke wrote the arrangements for those musicians. And then to hear Clark Terry, it's like going home to hang out with my friend again. So I chose that for that reason. And it just, I love Clark Terry.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, we both do. And having read the book as well, you get a whole new perspective on how hard he worked, some of the choices that he had to make, and just the fact that he's an upstanding dude, and he could play like no one else. I mean,
he could.
Yeah,
and then being the first African American on the Tonight Show, which lasted 10 years, 62 to 72. Clark broke the barriers. And I really am, that by now everybody watching, that Matt and I've already made it through the top 100. I really am disappointed that Clark Terry is not in there.
Yeah.
That leads me to the next thing, Matt, because I got stuck looking for all of the artists on this album. He loved to have about 16 in his band at any given time. Quentin Jackson, and Brett Woodman. Brett Woodman played on Mingus, 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 Mingus.
Aha.
However, Quentin Jackson played on Black Saint and the Center Lady.
So we heard him too. We heard him 2 weeks ago.
We heard him 2 weeks ago. So that blew me away. And then Brett Woodman, not only Mingus, 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 but Africa Brass with John Coltrane. So these guys have all toured with Ellington. Their with others is longer than most artists' discography. So all of these artists, Cat Anderson, Willie Cook, Ray Nance, Clark Terry, Quentin Jackson, all the way down to Jimmy Grissom on the vocals, Al Lucas on the bass, Sam Woodard on the drums. These guys have all toured with Ellington. And so one of the albums that kept coming back up to me was Duke with a Difference by Clark Terry. A lot of these guys were on that album with Clark Terry, Duke with a Difference. So I'm done. I'm out. I've said my piece. Whose clip's next?
Go for it, Matt.
All right, cool. Well, I would like to hear song number 9. It is part 1 called it's part 1 Festival Junction. And you mentioned Cat Anderson just a minute ago. I just wanted to highlight a section of Cat's. Start this right at 7 minutes, and we'll play right to the end because that's a minute until the end. Play it until he's done blowing, and you'll see what I'm talking about with Cat Anderson.
You'll know when he's done blowing. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Wow. Wow.
There are a lot of guys who can play high. You know, Maynard Ferguson can play high. Wayne Bergeron can play high. I'm not sure any of those could match Cat Anderson. I'm just not sure they could do it. Now, you know, Maynard uses a flatter mouthpiece that resonates a little different, so he can get way up in the stratosphere. I'm sure Wayne Bergeron does too. I don't know what mouthpiece Cat Anderson was using, but I can't imagine that he had one specially made for him to be able to get up that high. So his chops are just amazing.
I kept looking back at the piano trying to figure it out. It's the highest note on the piano. It's the triple C or quadruple C. That's what I was trying to count back there. I can't see it, but he plays that top note. And if you hit it on the piano, you can't even hear that note. And yet he is blowing that thing. I read something. Cat didn't need a mic when he soloed. He could play it so loud that you could hear it from everywhere. So
I believe that. I believe that because the sound doesn't change when he starts to solo. The sound of the rest of the band does not change, but he comes in over top of the band. Like he hasn't even stepped up to the mic. All he did was maybe stand up and blown over. Man, I mean, I love me some Maynard Ferguson and I love me Wayne Bergeron, but I've fallen for Cat Anderson, and I can't wait to start listening to some more of his solo work and stuff because it's just amazing. He's just amazing. Okay, I'm done.
That's good.
Dad, you're up. What clip do you want to hear?
Well, I chose Jeep's Blues, and I'd like to start that right from the beginning and play it for a minute or so. And when I talk about it, I would rather read what I learned about it than trying to explain what this piece is all about.
I guess I need to turn it off sooner or later, but I'll just keep
I guess so.
I'll keep it going.
Is that cool or what? Is that cool?
I'm just gonna let it roll, baby.
Let me read what this person wrote about this piece. The reckless open line is a smashing assertion of presence. It's blasé but means business, like the shiny fender of a Chevrolet catches the light. It demands your attention, and you instantly know that the Americans are here. The swing of the song lies in the lazy drum line that loosely holds together the entire piece. The virtuosity of Ellington quietly shows itself through the frills he scatters around, saying a lot through a few carefully selected notes. Enough to direct, but not enough to overpower the drunk saxophone that stumbles its way down the street, the focus of the brilliant standard. That's the way this person interpreted and described this, the Jeep's Blues.
Mm-hmm.
Is that cool or what?
It's very cool.
Especially like the drunk saxophonist who basically stumbles his way down the street and playing this sweetness coming out, coming through that bell of the horn. You can almost hear it all over the street, all over the neighborhood.
You smell the whiskey on his breath.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was just thinking almost like a clarinet cruising down the street in the middle of New Orleans, just letting at it.
Yeah. I wish I was a better wordsmith. I wish I could come up with stuff like that for songs, because that describes that song so well.
Yeah.
That lazy rhythm that the drummer's doing.
Yep.
Just to keep them all from falling off their chairs, you know, and keeping them in time.
Yep.
Wow,
and I think many notes have been made throughout this album about Duke's ability just to play a couple crucial chords at the right time. Nothing extravagant. He let the band do his thing, and he conducted from the piano.
Mm-hmm. Virtuosity.
Yep. It doesn't have to be fast to be swinging.
No.
And Jeep's Blues is a testament to that, because it's not a fast swing tune, but man, it sure is swinging.
Yeah. So there you go. There you have it. Thanks for letting me share that.
So overall, what was y'all's takes on the album?
Well, we had a great week. We had a great week because you were coming home this week last year when we did this album, you and I personally. So we were both looking forward to you coming home.
Oh, yes.
We recorded the Steve Coleman episode while you were here. But I had a lot of Duke in my ear that week that you were home. So that may have a little influence on my score this week, but man, Dad, what was your overall?
Well, when I first opened the album, there were so many different places where he was doing the introductions. He was doing, and now we have this person. There was this guy, and so I was lost. I was completely lost because I look forward to it going from one track to the next track to the next track. And so I thought at first, man, I do not enjoy trying to find this. So this afternoon, yesterday afternoon, I sat down and I purposefully went from one track that I knew there was some live action, some live music. And then I went to the next piece, and then I went to the next piece. And it was just really so smooth, so good. And you think of the Duke, and you got to say this is a great album. I do have one question. Where does I've not heard any other artist play the Star Spangled Banner? What's that?
I think it was part of opening up the show.
Okay.
Because you hear, and that was one of the reasons I didn't skip through a lot of it. You'll hear him say, hey, for you in attendance, don't go away mad. Duke will be back up later. So he started the show missing several of the members of the band. So I think that he just started the show with the Star Spangled Banner, which I thought was a really funny rendition. To hear Duke, of all people, play the Star Spangled Banner just blew me away. Very rigid, coming from Duke Ellington, almost as if it was like uncalled for stiffness.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know how much liberty he wanted to take with the Star Spangled Banner to make it swing. We've heard, different versions, this, that, and the other of the Star Spangled Banner, but I don't know how much liberty he wanted to take to swing it, or maybe they didn't have a chance to rehearse it, and he said, we're playing it from memory, let's do it just straight. Either way, it didn't bother me one bit. But like you, Dad, I can see, because your songs aren't numbered in where you listen to your music. So if they're just in alphabetical order, you would get a lot of talking and then all of the music down here. It's even rough when they are in order, because I tend to think I want to hear it, how it came out at the concert. And I don't think this album is concert number in order. That's what I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
It starts with the end of the night and almost begins with the ending.
Correct.
With some exceptions.
With some, the Star Spangled Banner being the first tune on the charts. But
so as I listened to it, about every second or third track, it would go back to play the Star Spangled Banner. And then I would listen to some of the introductions, and
we'll talk about some of that, and we need to fix that for you.
Yeah, no big deal. But it would go back there, and I don't need to hear it 5 times when I'm trying to listen to the album. I'm sorry, America. I'm an American, full blue-blooded
American,
but
American.
But
anyways, like you, I probably could have done without some of the introductions and talking. Not that I minded hearing Duke, but man, I wanted to hear the concert kind of the way that it was.
Now, two things I would add to that different, and maybe shake y'all up a little bit. First of all, they did have a recording session on Monday following the festival so that they could get clean solos, so they get clean sound. So a couple of the songs on this complete version are studio recordings. Most of them are not, though. I mean, you dig in, and they've only taken a couple, but they recorded most of them in studio for later use. The second piece of that is, although it's not chronological, I really thoroughly enjoyed the introductions and listening to the crowd. I also have to realize this. Columbia Records showed up for the first time ever to record a festival band playing. So for them, this was brand new. I wouldn't know what to cut out and what not to cut out, because I'm trying to tell you why you should go to jazz festivals. And so the crowd's going crazy, the eruption when they say, hey, we're done, thanks for joining us tonight, and the booing and the hissing. And I mean, I'm thinking how incredible to actually hear what was going on in 56. This was a few years ago. I'm not going to say how many years ago, because I'm looking at Dad in the upper screen here. But this was some time ago. The rainbow was no longer black or white, but
it was just purple.
It was purple.
So let me say, I was right around 10 years old when this was cut. And when I did listen to the album, I listened to the live pieces. I went over and just tried to focus on the live pieces. So I'd choose them each time.
And that's funny, because we have had several discussions. If I have my choice to listen to a studio album or listen to a live album, they have to be on point on the live album. So everything has to work, and they can't fall apart. They can't make mistakes. I enjoyed the live aspect of it. I did. I just could have done without some of the
for me, the album was just killer. It blew me away to hear the live version. Like you said, I'll take live every day over a studio recording, because it can be overdubbed, it can be corrected, cut, let's do it again. But the fact remains, what an amazing collection of both the introductions and the music, and some of the blunders that you might or might not hear. I didn't care if there was. I was there. I was sitting in the grass, and of course they mentioned that for the last 2 days it had been raining. So I'm sitting probably in wet grass in some kind of fold-out chair enjoying this moment in a beautiful state park. What an evening to partake in Duke Ellington's music. What I learned, though, was what swing really is.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know what swing sounds like when it comes to jazz music, that's this album.
We've heard good swing. We've heard Benny Goodman. We've heard
The Herdsman.
the Herds. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We've heard some really good swing, but Duke is just on another level. He's just on
I'm careful because I've been dropping all of the spoilers. Have we gone through Basie yet? Probably not.
No, we haven't.
Spoiler ahead. We might see Count Basie too.
There might be another Duke Ellington album on the list as well. Maybe, I don't know. We'll have to tune in and see.
So when you said setting in the grass, the wet grass, I'm sorry, but I went back to Woodstock, and I'm thinking, what a festival that was.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that was Mudfest.
yeah.
So, Dad, did this album shake your world?
Honestly, it did after I was able to sit down and deliberately listen to each of the tracks. But initially, last week when I started listening to it, I thought, I'm not going to be able to get through this. I don't know how I'm going to rate this because it's Duke Ellington. I'm supposed to rate him high, and he's this low number in the list, and how can I? And so I was lost in the flow of things. But again, once I got settled and I was able to click and follow the live portions, I thought, man, oh man, this is so stinking good. It was so right on. Yeah, shook. Yeah, it did. I love the A Train. I just love that piece.
Me too. It's a standard that anytime it comes on, you know you're going to listen to the whole thing because you just can't turn it off.
I love the song, though. In the history of it, I think this is what I'm learning, Matt. This album shook my world partly because of the historical aspect. Mm-hmm. I love the history of where America's classical music came from. I love what they've fought for, what they've strived for, and for Ellington to make a big comeback, if you will, from this album, the history, the jazz, and I want to pay those respects when I finally learn how to play jazz to the greats that have come before, the greats who currently are, and like Carl Allen, this week's What's New. Some of these gentlemen are educators. Some of them are just performers. Some of them want to just continue to perpetuate the jazz music. And that, to me, is the historical aspect worth preservation. So to me, even the dialogue, I appreciated.
Sure.
Matt, what about you, Matt? It shook your world?
Yes, it did. This album met all of the criteria for me. The craftsmanship was there. The awareness. I could picture the band. I could picture the crowd. I knew how it was going down. The creativity. It's Duke Ellington. I mean, come on. It's creative. The spirit. like you said, you could feel yourself sitting in the wet grass. You were just there. You were there in spirit. You knew you were there. Yeah. The emotion for me, top notch. So I'm ready to give my score. This album shook me to the core. And I went all the way to 10. 10 out of 10 for Duke Ellington at Newport.
That's a righteous
score. You
score.
went that high?
I did.
Dad, what'd you do?
I hit a 9.5. 9.5.
Can't complain about that.
Yeah.
I have to check to see if I got above a 5.
You're bad.
I went.
I'll bet you like the part where you thought it was a flugelhorn. Really, it was a clarinet. Right?
Yes. I had to clean my ears out. I went to a 10.
Yeah. You went all the way to the top as well.
Yeah, for so many reasons.
Yeah.
And to one of our commenters, thank you, Kendra. We don't get to 10s very often.
No.
And so you've made a comment last week that one of our 10s that hit was Cannonball Adderley, something else. And now here we are again, given another 10. And they are very far and few between up to now. So you'll have to stay tuned to get more. Next week's artist?
Yeah. Oh, we get to turn the page. We actually get to turn the page. This week's artist.
Do that all again with the same excitement.
This week's artist is one of the first artists in the countdown from the ECM label. So I'm super excited. We also I didn't know anything about this artist before we came to him. So this week's artist, to put in your ears, Jan Garbarek. The album is called Afric Pepperbird. It's on the ECM label, released on LP and CD. And this was recorded September 22nd and 23rd of 1970. So Jan Garbarek, Afric Pepperbird is this week's artist.
Sounds good. Sounds appealing.
I don't want to scare you off one bit. It's different, Dad.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little different, but you're going to enjoy it to listen to it. Give it its first listen just for the enjoyment aspect. Listen to it a couple more times and critique and rate it.
Yeah,
just like you always have. But I'm super excited because this is one of the first ECM that we get. So,
and that means a lot. So I think we'll have some information on ECM next week when we cover it, because ECM has made a splash in the industry, being one of the first labels to dump all of their music on digital streaming platforms. Mm-hmm. So you'll be able to find this album anywhere and everywhere. Edition of Contemporary Music, ECM. Manfred Eicher and Carl Egger.
Yep.
And Manfred Eicher is somebody who I think everybody should know, will know, or needs to know the name of because of this record label.
I do too.
In 1969.
I agree 1,000,000%. So we've got some fun facts coming up about Jan and about ECM next week. Be sure to tune in. Drew, why don't you tell them where they can find more about us?
Each week, we would prefer you just go to our website, theunconnoisseur.com. Check us out there. We've got great information as far as our rating. You can see what we've done every album up to this point in time and even beyond. So you can find us there. Of course, you're on YouTube. And thank you guys so much over in Europe for tuning in on the 3 main channels. I know a lot of Spotify has been hit. A lot of great information coming from there. So thank you for tuning in.
And wait, before you hit stop, we forgot to mention that last week was International Jazz Day. Yes. So, yep, I had a lot of jazz in my ears that day.
April 30th, International Jazz Day.
International Jazz Day. So
good.
All right. Peace out.
Cheers.
Yep. Later, y'all.